Just 5 minutes ago, an earthquake shook the foundations of the monarchy when top-secret financial records were unexpectedly leaked from the steel vault at St. James's Palace. No longer mere speculation. The world was stunned by a brutal truth. A massive $16 million deficit that Prince Harry had frantically concealed for the past 3 years. While the public awaited a warm family reunion, the London night saw unmarked Range Rovers silently making their way to a ghost conference, an emergency audit instead of a family dinner. There, the King's message rang out sharply. Father's bank is officially closed. The truth about the supposed independence was torn apart, revealing an irreparable financial abyss. But the question holding Buckingham Palace's breath was, how could such a vast fortune vanish so quickly? Prepare yourself, because right now we're going to dissect every detail of the file to understand why $16 million disappeared without a trace. The dossier reveals a sobering reality. Harry has been living a champagne lifestyle on a ginger beer budget. Sir Michael Stevens, the King's living ledger, didn't mince words, labeling the situation structural insolvency. It is the ultimate financial irony. A man who fled the firm to find freedom has instead become a slave to his own vanity. The centerpiece of this disaster is the Montecito Mansion, a $9.5 million white elephant that is literally eating cash. With interest rates skyrocketing, that variable rate mortgage has become a financial noose, tightened further by the astronomical costs of maintaining manicured gardens and a staff fit for a reigning monarch. He isn't just living in a home. He is trapped in a monument to his own ego that requires a Hollywood blockbuster income he simply no longer generates. But the vanity tax is where the audit gets truly embarrassing. An estimated $4 million has vanished into a black hole of litigation. Harry's obsession with the High Court has turned into a lucrative pension fund for his lawyers, while he walks away with nothing but dismissed stamps and orders to pay the other side's costs. It's a staggering display of burning capital just to buy a sense of victimhood. Add to that a $2.5 million paranoia premium for private security, hiring ex-Navy SEALs to guard a podcaster, and you have the perfect recipe for bankruptcy. Harry is paying for a head of state's protection while producing the content of a reality star. He is playing a royal game he can no longer afford, and the bank has finally noticed that the accounts are empty. However, the most chilling part of the audit wasn't the debt itself, but who was looking at it. As the final figures were tallied, the scene shifted from the ledger to the people around the table. The numbers were no longer just math, they were a weapon. King Charles looked at the total with the eyes of a grieving father, but across from him, Prince William was staring at the same $16 million with the cold, calculating eyes of a future king. The atmosphere in the Oak Room was about to turn from a financial audit into a blood sport, as the most brutal power struggle in modern royal history was about to ignite. Inside the Oak Room at St. James's Palace, the air grew thick with a suffocating tension that transcended mere business. Around a mahogany table sat a family fractured by duty, staring at a $16 million debt that had become a ticking time bomb. King Charles, looking every bit the weary father, broke the silence with a voice trembling between love and despair. His instinct was purely paternal. He pleaded for a quiet, private settlement from his personal funds to spare his son the public humiliation of a California bankruptcy court. "We cannot have the king's son evicted," he whispered, a desperate attempt to choose mercy over the cold, hard facts of the ledger. But the atmosphere shattered the moment Prince William spoke. There was no warmth in the Prince of Wales's eyes, only the razor-sharp resolve of a future monarch. He didn't just disagree. He dismantled his father's plea with a commercial liability assessment that cut through the room like a blade. William's argument was hauntingly logical. To bail Harry out would be to fund their own destruction. He exposed the brutal cycle of the Montecito business model. Every pound sent across the Atlantic would only stabilize Harry long enough for him to launch the next media assault, the next memoir, the next breach of family privacy. "We are subsidizing the very weapons used against us," William declared, his voice cold and unwavering. The stalemate was finally broken by Princess Anne, the general of the House of Windsor. With the steely pragmatism of a woman who views the monarchy as a military operation, She delivered the final blow to Charles's hopes. She used a metaphor that silenced the room. A ship of state cannot allow a sailor to drill holes in the hull just because he is seasick. You do not comfort the sailor, you put him ashore to save the ship. The decision was no longer about a father and son. It was about institutional survival. As the king's head bowed in defeat, the conversation shifted to a terrifying new classification that would change Harry's status forever. They were no longer looking at a family member in trouble. They were officially labeling him a toxic asset. And the consequences of that definition would be far more devastating than any debt. The warmth of kinship has officially evaporated, replaced by the chilling jargon of a corporate liquidation. In that soundproofed room, Prince Harry was stripped of his humanity and rebranded with a term that signaled the end of his royal existence: toxic asset. In the high-stakes world of global finance, a toxic asset is something so fundamentally broken, so burdened by debt and controversy, that it can no longer be sold. It only serves to drain the lifeblood of the institution holding it. By adopting this cold, clinical label, the palace has effectively depersoned the Duke of Sussex. He is no longer a son or a brother. He is a liability to be mitigated, a bad investment that must be written off to save the parent company. The logic applied was as ruthless as it was undeniable. The auditors argued that bailing Harry out would do more than just clear a $16 million debt. It would validate a dangerous business model. To pay his bills is to send a clear message to the world. You can attack the crown, profit from its secrets, and we will still pick up the tab when your ego outruns your bank account. Princess Anne and Prince William have reached a consensus that is as silent as a grave. They will not subsidize a lifestyle that is contractually dependent on their own betrayal. The two Harrys problem has been solved by simply removing the royal half from the equation. But a verbal agreement wasn't enough to secure the borders of the monarchy. To ensure this financial severance was absolute and irreversible, they needed something more than a handshake. They needed a legal execution. Sir Michael Stevens reached for a final, black-bound folder, a document so secretive and so final that it would never see the light of day. This was the birth of the St. James Protocol, a masterclass in bureaucratic strangulation that was about to turn Harry's world into a financial fortress with no way out. The atmosphere in the Oak Room shifted from debate to a cold, systematic execution. Sir Michael Stevens laid out the St. James Protocol, a document that didn't just cut ties, it enacted a total financial blockade. This was the Crown exercising its raw institutional power, designed to strip Prince Harry of his greatest weapon, his perceived royal backing. The first pillar, the sovereign firewall, was absolute. It decreed that no bailout would ever cross the Atlantic, meaning even if a foreclosure sign was hammered into the lawn of the Montecito mansion, the palace would watch in silence. The Bank of Pa didn't just close, it was erased from the ledger. The second blow was even more devastating: a global credit freeze. By issuing a formal notice of non-liability to international financial institutions, the palace effectively shattered Harry's credit rating. Without the king's invisible guarantee, he is no longer a prince to the banks. He is a high-risk debtor with dwindling assets. The third and final clause terminated the gray zone, severing every personal link to the royal checkbook. No more back-channel pleas to aides or emotional calls to the king. Every financial inquiry is now rerouted to an external legal firm. The direct line to his father's heart has been replaced by a wall of high-priced lawyers. As Prince William pressed his seal onto the memo, the trap was set. This wasn't a family argument, it was a sovereign decree that could not be appealed or undone. The St. James Protocol was live, and the financial oxygen was being sucked out of the Sussex brand. But as the ink dried in London, 5,000 miles away in California, the sun was rising on a man who still believed he was untouchable. Harry was about to pick up his phone, expecting salvation, only to realize that he was calling a ghost. As the morning sun climbed over the manicured hedges of Montecito, Prince Harry stood in his study, clutching his phone like a lifeline. He was waiting for the chime of a notification, a wire transfer confirmation, a digital "I forgive you" from the king's private accounts. For 40 years, the world had always caught him before he hit the ground, and he assumed today would be no different. But the silence from London was deafening. When the screen finally flickered to life, it wasn't a credit alert. It was a cold, automated invoice from the Crown Estate, demanding immediate repayment for the remaining renovations of Frogmore Cottage. The shock was visceral. The palace wasn't sending a life raft. They were sending a debt collector. The bitterness deepened as Harry tried to bypass the wall. He dialed the private back channels he had used for decades, only to be met with the chilling drone of a disconnected line. He sent urgent emails to the family's private server, but they bounced back instantly, marked "access denied." In that moment, the crushing weight of reality set in. He was no longer a prince in exile. He was just another over-leveraged celebrity in a mansion he couldn't afford. The royal fairy dust that had once shielded him from the consequences of his choices had vanished, leaving him naked before his creditors. The man who had declared war on the firm suddenly realized the firm had simply turned him off. Yet, this personal tragedy is merely the beginning of a much larger, global judgment. The St. James Protocol marks the end of an era where titles served as an infinite credit card. From where I stand, Prince William isn't being a cold brother. He is acting as a rational CEO, protecting a 1,000-year-old institution from a hostile takeover. He understood a truth Harry refused to learn. You cannot set fire to the headquarters and then demand the company pay your rent. By severing the financial cord, the monarchy has transitioned from a family soap opera into a fortress of accountability. This $16 million deficit isn't just a number. It is the cost of a freedom Harry claimed he wanted, but never prepared to fund. The era of the royal safety net is dead, and in its place stands a crown that values survival over sentimentality. Now the gavel falls to you. Was this a necessary act of institutional preservation, or a heartless betrayal of blood? We need to know where you stand in this historic divide. Type "fortress" in the comments if you support William's steel-cold financial blockade, or type "family" if you believe a father's love should outweigh the ledger. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the vault is now locked and the true accounting has only just begun. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.